I've gone right through, and yeah, that's absolutely perfect. Could you just take a photograph of that, please? I'm going to turn it round and do the same at the other side. How to think this, I've got a 10mm drill in, and again I'm going to hold the drill square onto the aluminium, and then I'm going to tip it to the side like that to follow the line of the hole. Be careful that you don't drill too far. And that looks about right. And now we'll pop the screw in. Again, spine down the line you've drawn so you pick up the hole in the bottom rail. You can feel it bite now. You're going to hold that in line so it's pulling it up flush. You see the screw coming through the other side, and that's, you can see that now. Can you pull it up together like that? And that's perfect. What we'll do eventually is grind the end of that screw off with a mini grinder and probably just flush the head of that off so it's flush. That's in there for keeps now. Do the same the other side. We're now going to cut the corners off this screen, and we need to follow that bottom line like that, and then we need to project that curve on like that. We need to cut that off now. Again, cutting on the wastewood side of the line and spine down the blade, guiding the blade with the finger, we start to cut. And it is quite important that you do spy down there. And it's also a good idea that you only cut halfway through, because you can then turn the windscreen over and spine down the same process. You can do the other side, and that'll give you a perfect cut. Cut the other side. We're now going to take off the parcel tape from the window. Remember, full tape, parcel tape and masking tape. The quicker you can get it off after you've used it temporarily, the better. If you do leave it overnight, the glue from the adhesive does tend to stick on and you can't get it off easily. You can see already that it's leaving a residue on the glass, which is unfortunate, but that'll come off with a little bit of cellulose thinners. or white spirit or something like that. So with the tape on, the next thing is to trim off the glazing rubber, which you will need a new sharp Stanley knife. Make sure you do use a complete knife and not just the blade. So with that, into the corner of the glass like that, and the corner of the aluminium, we're going around there, pressing well into the corner, so if you do scratch the glass you won't be seeing it. Goes right into the corner there, and you can feel that it's cutting nicely, trimming it off like that. And that's the windscreen very close to being completed. The correct shape looks nice, round the corners, a lot bigger and wider, and gives you more protection than our competitors' cars. And it's got the proper shape underneath that will fit with the scuttle. Now we come to the last job, or one of the last jobs, and that is to fit the lower seal. Now, you may find in the manufacturing process of the bottom rail that the ends of that curve have closed up slightly and it's difficult to get the rubber in. We did struggle and we did get the rubber in there without too much of a problem, only to find that when we fitted it to the car we didn't want the rubber in those corners. So basically we will feed the rubber all the way in. Apart, when you come to those bends that you'll stop, you'll leave it loose, because as we'll see, what happens is that you need to pull the ends of the rubber in a different direction in order to get the slight bulge that appears in that corner. So you'll put the rubber in there apart from the ends. So if you start from the middle, you mark the middle so you know what you're aiming at, so you've got the equal amounts on both sides, then you can see that that is just in the middle, just there and there. Do it from that side so you can see it. So put it there like that, and with a bluntish screwdriver just push that in to the channel. A little bit tricky. So hook the back in first and then just push the front in. Careful you don't slip, you don't poke your finger, scratch the aluminium, etc. It's a slow job, but definitely 1,000 times better than the previous system we had of using a silicone sealer. Take your time, don't we?
Okay.
I've almost got this rubber in, or I've got it in as far as we've decided we want to put it, and that is up to these corners. Once you've got it up to the corner, then stop then. It doesn't have to go all the way. Just get your screwdriver and run your screwdriver along the groove, both sides like that, to make sure it's gone well into the teeth. And that's virtually ready to fit onto the car. Now, we did manage to get the rubber right into the corners and right up to there and then cut it off on one car, only to find that when you put it onto the car that this corner didn't sit down, it ruched. So we found it better not to put the rubber into the groove at the corners, because then when it does sit on the body, then you can drag that around like that and trap it underneath the pillar and underneath the windscreen just there, and it takes that ruchness out of the corner. but you'll find that out yourself when you come to do it, just by your experience. So that is the rubber in there. We've still got to trim off those little screws that stick through, and that's ready now to offer up onto the car. Remember several things. That it is a good idea to polish it all with a machine before you assemble it, but you will need to finally go over it again afterwards to get any marks off, because it is relatively soft, the aluminium, that marks when it's on a table like this, or you can polish it in situ like this. The other thing is that, as you know, those of you who have already bought hoods from us, that you do have to drill this frame to put the poppers on, the frame for the hood. It may be a good idea to drill this before you put the windscreen together. You will see, if we look at this section of the window frame, that you'll see that the glass goes in there like that, and when the rubber's in, it does mean that you've got possibly a quarter of an inch of material there that the little screw or the pop rivet will go into. If it was to encroach past the rubber, then you would find it's not impossible that the very sharp end of the self-tapping screw, or perhaps the pop rivet, would puncture the glass and cause it to shatter. So it may be a good idea that those of you who have got hoods or are thinking of fitting hoods, to put these poppers to the top of the frame before you start. And any material that sticks through from the screw or pop rivet you can grind off, or satisfy yourself it's not going to reach the glass. Now, after this assembly of the windscreen, we're going to move on to the windscreen pillars, and we're also going to fit on to shaping the pillars and fitting the windscreen to the car. Now, at this stage we are going to use old footage from an old video of a Series 3 car, so you'll see that it is different. It has got a detachable scuttle. Sorry, the bonnet and the scuttle is separate, but it does show you how to form the pillars and how to fit it to the car, all of which are the same principle. The two tails from the lower windscreen seal, whatever happens at this stage, don't cut these off. Leave these with the amount of material sticking out there, because when you do fit it to the car, you'll need to get hold of these tails to pull them tight, so as you trap them underneath the screen and underneath the windscreen pillar. And you do need to file the edges to round the corners off, or use a mini grinder, so that they're not sharp, the radius. That's all the way around it. I'll cover that a bit more later on. Then we need to shape them. If we come up to this car across here, this Exmo, you'll see that we need to shape them. So there's a curve there that follows the scuttle, a curve at the back, and then need a slight crease in there to go straight up like that. It's a scrap metal rods like that. We place them on the floor, and with a ball peen hammer we tap it on the back like that, evenly. And you can see that that is curving that just as we intended. Got a nice curve on that. The same with the other one. The main workshop where the vice is, and we'll put the crease in across there. So just to recap, we're going to put a crease in them exactly at the point where the pillar changes direction. Sorry, directly parallel with the bottom line at that point just there where the pillar changes direction. And we're putting a crease in it there like that. The same with that one, parallel with the bottom line, putting the crease in just there. Like so. Not only do we need to put a crease in it, but we also need to twist the pillar. And we'll get Andrew just to point his camera on these pillars for a few minutes so you can actually see. So we need, if we put them flat on that face there, it would mean that where it bolts onto the screen, it wouldn't be level with the screen because the screen is parallel. So when it's on the side of the car, we need to tip the back of the pillar in. So we'll go to the vise, we'll do this in the vise. We're making sure that that is level, like that. And then, with a ball peen hammer, or with a hammer, we're giving that a good blow behind, like that. And that will put a definite crease in that there. Definite crease across there. The same with this one. Up to the same line again. And then twist this round. Twisted that round like that. Just hope it's the right direction. Twisting that round there. We now need to put those together like that to make sure they look more or less square, which they look as if they do. They both look the same, like a wine glass. Now we're going to try this. It's a bit of a long shot that it'll be right. I think I'll just bend them over a little bit more. So we put that into the vise there like that. Again, in fact, we could put that one there like that, and that one there. We could bend them both the same, in the hope we can get them at the same angle. So that might be all right. Right, if you follow me through here now, we'll just go and try them on the car. So we compare them with this car here, and they don't look bad at all. It looks like that quick little bit of bending we did looks as if that would actually do the trick. So what happens now is that we now fit these pillars on to the windscreen itself. So these must be flush with the front of that. So with the marker, the white mark, we're going to line that up at the bottom of the screen there, and we're going to mark up from the white mark round about an inch or an inch and a quarter to miss the self-tapping screw that we have just there. So we've marked up there an inch and a quarter, and we need to mark inwards just bend that there. So we're going to mark them both the same. That one just there, and it is 1.25 inches. So we'll mark that 1.25 inches from the top, there, and mark that down there. A line down there, and that is going to be the centre line. Yeah, we just want to be drilling a little bit on the other side of that line. So if you just cut now, Andrew, I'll drill that we have, looking front ways on, we have a perfect shape just there that touches at the top and touches at the bottom, and the distance in between the two is round about 3/4 inch. As we turn it round and look from the back, we've got the pillars back to back, and then there's a wishbone type shape there. So just to be precise, suggested, simply because you come around here, cameraman, we'll screw this together now, simply because you may need to position the windscreen a couple of times like I did. I had to have 2 goes at it, and there were several holes underneath the windscreen pillars, and several more in the aluminium windscreen frame. Now this is quite normal, and even if you've got 100 holes, providing that the pillars cover these holes, that is in order. So we come now to the windscreen to fit the pillars onto them. Don't forget, if we look here, you can see there are 1 or 2 attempts where we've tried to fit them. So it is a difficult job on the car, and in all fairness, I've had more experience than you, so my windscreen may be better than yours, but if you just take your time and try to follow the instructions that we're giving you, then you won't go far wrong. Now these self-tapping screws, they are small, and they do feel like they've only just gripped into the aluminium, but they do work. And we've used them on all cars, and then we have had some builders decide to do it differently. They've drilled the screen from, as we've done here, and then they've countersunk from behind and put countersunk headed screws from behind with a stud sticking out and then put small nuts on. You could do that, or you could drill and tap the frame, but remember, you could easily damage the glass. Now, when I drilled the frame, a very sharp point on those self-tapping screws, you just remove that point with a mini grinder. It may just give you that little bit of help that you need not to break the screen. Okay, so that is the windscreen assembled. We're now going to put it on the car. If we look at the scuttle from above, you'll see that there is a hole pre-cut for the demister vents. If you put the screen 1/2 inch away from those holes, then you'll find that is the correct position for it. So the screen needs to be pressed down as tight as possible. So we put it there like that, and I actually did this on last night when we had gone. I had the assistance of some masking tape, and I put some masking tape on there like that, just to hold it for me while I drilled it and lined the screws up. So we got it, if you come around here, cameraman, we got it so it was just 1/2 inch from there like that. And then we did have a couple of goes at it. So I've already got the holes here already, but I did tape it all down with tape. Very quick and very easy, because I did most of the hard work last night. And we're looking, if we come behind, we're looking to get it pressed down as tight as it can to the top of that scuttle just there. And then when we look at it square on from the front, you can see that there is a gap there because it's obviously tipped, but that gap does get bigger into the corners. You can see that if you come behind again, cameraman, that we've got the pillars, come on your side, we've got the pillars hugging the panel just there, like that, and the same on the other side. Now, and the other thing that's important, that the bottom of that must be parallel with that seam in the body. So don't over tighten it at this stage, because you can strip them, but that's okay there until at this stage now you could drill through them and put the roofing bolts in, the 6mm roofing bolts, and that would be quite permanent. Remember, you've still got to round all these corners off on the pillars so that they comply with the regulations, and also you're rounding off the screen, this sharp corner on the screen, you're taking that sharp corner off, you're filing it, grinding it, taking that off. This is the new windscreen in place, and you can see the new rubber that's in there that obviously points forward. That is the ruched effect that in the corner we're trying to get over. That just hasn't quite gone down. You could put a little bit of Evo stick and stick that down, but what we really want you to do is to get hold of these tails and pull those tails through that hole tight, to pull them tight, and then to fasten the windscreen down and then snip the tails off afterwards. We've just put a little bit of silicone sealer in that corner. So that's basically how the windscreen fits. You can see that these are the original Ford Sierra windscreen wiper arms that we've cut down, and then we've cut down that one mono blade that you get in your kit to use the two sub blades from them. We fasten it on with two small self-tapping screws. Around the hole in the bonnet top, where the spindle of the wiper motor comes through, we've cut an egg-shape gasket to stop the water going down there. And this system works quite well. Where I'm actually coming from is that this is the original Ford Sierra wiper mechanism used in this car. Now, I've always personally promoted the original Ford Sierra mechanism, but lots of builders have what they thought improved on the system and used one from a Mini or another vehicle. The Mini is quite good because it has a separate motor and a rack and pinion system on a long cable. That means that you can put the motor out of the way, which could in fact be better than the system I'm promoting, but that's up to you. If you use my system, then you don't need to go out and have any further expense. Over the years that I've been promoting this system, we've managed to, what I feel is, perfect it, and this 2B now has what I'd consider the best system of the utilisation of the Ford Sierra's own motor as we've seen yet. So you'll see that as we look from the top, there is a couple of screws, one there and one there, that actually hold the motor in position. Be careful not to over tighten these screws so as to damage or pull down too much the bonnet towards the motor. We're going to look underneath and look at the motor, and then I'll go on to explain to you how you modify it. To simplify the adaptation of the Ford Sierra's motor, I could just say all you do is measure the distance of the spindles now against the distance of the spindles before the modified, and cut that lot out and just shorten it. And that basically is what we do. We decide on the distance between the two holes in the bonnet, we measure the two spindles that's from the motor, and we take that much out the middle, just like that. Well, I could leave it at that, but I'm not. I'm going to go on now and tell you precisely how to do this. Again, as normal, we've screwed the two halves of this adapted motor together using self-tapping screws and small bolts. I still feel that this is superior to welding it because it gives you a chance to adapt it if you make any mistakes. You'll see there is a support bracket that is in stainless steel on this car that hopefully you can see quite well. That hangs down from the bonnet and that fastens onto the two fixing holes that are already there, that are rubber mounted from your original motor. So that isn't supplied in the current kits, but it's not impossible in the future that could be supplied as a part of the kit when we increase the price, as is a little angle section at the back of that, just to give it a little bit more strength. They're things that you may have to make and improvise and use yourself. As we look underneath here, there are several other areas that I will point out to you while you can see, is that web underneath the bonnet. We've had to just cut it away further back for that arm there that moves backward and forward to actually miss. So that was something quite important, that we've had to trim that away. And we had to take a little bit off the plastic cowl that went round the motor to clear that bar. Obviously what's happened is that over the period of time since we've had this system, we've managed to alter things on the bonnet and alter things on the chassis so that we can use this quite successfully, and it does work well. You can see through there we've got the main fixers that go through the original holes in the wiper and mount just either side of the two spindles, and here we can see the screws through the arms where we've overlapped them and screwed them together. So I'm going to move now to a unmodified motor that's on the floor. You don't think we should do it directly underneath that light? You're looking at this from the same angle as you looked at the mechanism underneath the bonnet, and we need to cut this now. So starting from that side, we're marking 7¼ inches. Just there. So I really need you now to make a drawing of this, or get yours out and write these measurements down. That first cut on that side is 7¼ inches. We then move to the other end, and from the other end it's 9¼ inches. And notice that we are talking in real measurements. None of this here modern metric stuff, this is real. 9¼ inches from that end. We then go to the main activating bar, and from this end we're measuring 8½ inches there, and from the other end we're measuring 9 inches. That bit there we're throwing away. On the lower motor activating rod, we're measuring 5 inches from this end.
Which end?
From the motor end, 5 inches from the motor end, and 3.5 inches from the opposite end. And again, the bit in the middle we're throwing away. This main bracket that comes out of the motor, we need to project up where the bracket goes like that, mark just there and mark just there, because that area just here and that area just here we throw away. So just to recap, I'll quickly go over these cut measurements once more. 7 1/4, 9 1/4, 8 1/2, 9, 5, 3 1/2 from the end. Then that little piece there, that piece there, that piece there, and that piece there are all scrap. I'm just going to go off and cut this now and come back in a few moments with all the bits that I've cut up. But let's not forget one thing. Let's just put arrows like that on all these bits, so we do know we put them all back together again, that they're all pointing that way. But what you really need to do, those of you with digital cameras, is to photograph this before you start, because you could cut it all up and then you could perhaps go down the pub and have 10 pints and come back and forget what you've done. So it's important that you remember how it all goes. It's not impossible that you may have 2 donor vehicles and you'd have one that you could copy off. So just before I do go, we've got the holes in there, the rubber mounted holes, 2 there, 1 each side of there, that we can all use again to fasten it onto the car. Also, it wouldn't be a bad idea just to power this up. There's the things where you plug your wires in. Power it up to make sure it works before you start, so that when you put it back together again, you know what you're looking for. Incidentally, one further thing, that all these joints are all spring-loaded nylon bushers into... Give me that. Okay, you can see this now, that we're nearly there with this. I've cut through it 95% of the way with a mini grinder, and now, just so you can see it easier, we're going to take out these bits that we don't want, and without moving it too much, we've got to put it back together again. So then we've agreed that that's scrap, and we've agreed that little bit there scrap. But remember, we're not throwing anything away yet, because we could use these for something else. There might be a little bracket or a stay you want further on in the build that you might just... Let's not get these mixed up. We've got the arrows pointing towards that way. Snap that off. That there. Snap that off. There. That little bit there we agreed was to go. That's gone. Right. Now, there's all the bits we're going to reuse. Now, I want you to check it yourself, but I've worked out that the distance between the spindles is 10 1/4 inches. So all that happens is all this goes back together again, like that and like that, to give you 10 1/4 inches between the spindles. But you'll measure like that, almost there with that. And all that happens is that because of the nature of this pressing, it's easy to put that in the vise and to press that lot together. That nicely in the vise, that will press into each other, and it really does lend itself to being fastened together and bolted together and not welding. Because if you bolt it together, then what happens is, if you don't quite get it right, if it isn't 10 1/4, it's 10 3/8, or 10 1/8, or 10 15/16, then it means you can just unbolt it and do it again. So that goes there like that. There is already a hole there, you can see the hole, so that will go on there. And that lot will just all bolt up, as easy as anything. So I'll clamp it up for the time being, so we can pretend. So that clamps up like that. And then we know that those two will go together like that. Now we've got to remember those arms move like that, so they've got to be tandem like. And again, you can see that's a U-shape pressing. That can be pushed on top of that like that. Get those two arms the same, they're both at the same angle. You can see all these arrows are still pointing up the way, so we have got nothing mixed up. So that goes together like that, and then that one just there, again, that overlaps it, and that goes together like that. And that's basically it. That's a modified cut and shut wiper mechanism. Now, there are a couple of finer points to it, that it does appear that it wipes the screen sufficiently for the SVA test. But if you decided that you did want it to wipe the screen a little bit more, have a little bit of a longer wipe across towards the passenger, then that little drop arm that comes out of the motor just there, can we see it? That little drop arm just there, if you cut it in half and just widen it by 1/4 inch, then it does give you a longer wipe if you should need it. That now at that angle, and pretend that this measuring tape is the bonnet, then those spindles have to come through the bonnet holes like that, about at that angle, which means at the same angle you must bend a little bit of flat strip to make an angle bracket to fasten the motor frame to the bonnet. Obviously don't tighten those screws up too much, because you put a ding in the bonnet, but you do need those to push up as tight as you can to the bonnet, so you've got sufficient material, sufficient shaft coming through the holes to put your wipers on. You may find that you've got to grind the back edge of the wiper away so it clears the bonnet. All this mechanism here does push up quite tight onto the bonnet. So remember to get it operational first on the floor, working well on the floor with your power to it, and then offer it up to the bonnet. Then very gingerly offer some power to it and watch it go around, and make sure that all the arms and all the levers clear everything that's underneath. The last phase of the GRP, as I've already stated, that we supply is good quality. However, there are certain surface imperfections in it. This is usually caused by imperfections in the mould. Also, the actual manufacturing process also creates little scratches and marks in it, and the handling, the handling and transportation also causes marks in it. Nothing major, but it does have scratches. You yourself might mark it or damage it during transit or while you're building the car. Don't worry, it's quite easy to rectify. Provided the scratch isn't too deep, then you can get this out and I'll show you how to do it now. We take this wing here, we take a Stanley knife blade and we put quite a bad scratch in the wing like that.